Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. Today I am going to be using some Christmas items. This is the Snowflakes 3D embossing folder, the poinsettias, the large snowflakes, small snowflakes, and the winter greenery are all part of the Lovely Layers set. So how are we going to cut down the time that it takes us to get dimensional die cuts? This is it. This is the key. It's your scrap pile, by the way. Just whatever you have in your scrap pile. So I pulled out a bunch of different colors. And it was really important to me to pull out things that were like classic items that I know that I can use again and again and again for Christmas. So I'm just going to start putting the die cuts on the scraps that I have. Now you'll notice here I have 3 different colors of reds. That isn't even necessary. The 2 middle layers I'm cutting out of the same red because I have more of that than I do the other things. But the point is to just use a colored card base. We'll come back to why that is in a moment. The reason that I wanted to pick out all the things that I know I could use again and again and again is because Honeybee is having a Christmas in July sale. So are other people. I'll have my link below listed for craft sales. But theirs is, today is the last day for it. I was a little behind in getting my video up. I apologize. But the Lovely Layers, the embossing folders, things like snowflakes, poinsettias, pine, greenery, like these are things that are great to get on a discount because you can use them an endless amount of times. So that's just that. Now, why is it important to use your scraps? It doesn't necessarily have to be scraps. That's just what I use. That's what I go to first so that I can use up the things that I have in my little scrap tray first before I'm getting other things. So once I have all of my die cuts adhered with their tape, I am going to use a piece of navy blue cardstock. I'm going to spritz the back, and this is going to be the background for my card. So I just ran that through. I'm using a Platinum 6. So the universal, what is it? The universal plate system tells you right on there all of the sandwiches that you need. There, it's just written right on the thing. So you don't even have to have like a booklet or anything. It's great. But doing the dimensions. So why is it important to have colored cardstock? It is important to have colored cardstock because here I'm going to show you the poinsettia layered up. And if you're not sure how to layer these, Honeybee always has all of their layering guides on their website. So you would just go to the poinsettia and then open the PDF that has that. But you can see that it does look dimensional, but not as dimensional as it could look. So we're going to do some shading with our markers, but the reason that it is faster and the reason that it is easier is because we're not working on white cardstock. Now, I will plant my flag and die on that hill that doing them in white cardstock gives me the best dimension, but sometimes I either don't have the time to do it all, or maybe you're a person who isn't that comfortable. We all struggle, at least in the beginning, to be comfortable with darker colors. So going in with darker colors makes it so much easier when it isn't a stark white piece of cardstock. So going in with that that R59 is not nearly as scary when you're putting it on a piece of like cranberry colored cardstock because they're nearly the same color. So I like to kind of stack mine up and then I trace around the edge. I do this normally with my white cardstock as well. But this time I can go in, instead of starting with my lightest color, I can go in with my darkest color because it's not white cardstock and I don't have to worry about it. So for the bottom layer, which I said is like this cranberry color, I'll have all of them linked below. Then I'm going to use that R59 and the R29 and then blend out those two with a R35. You're not really going to see the 35. It's just to help blend out that 29. So for this one, which I think is like cherry colored cardstock, my darkest color is going to be the R29. Now you could do all of these all the way out to the R59, but I just didn't think it was necessary. It's going to give give me a lot of dimension adding the marker without me having to use 4 colors of markers on every single layer, because the colored cardstock is acting as one of my marker colors. I hope that makes sense. So I'm just going to follow those shadows that I've, put down, make sure that I'm blending out my colors. So for these two, it was like the R29 and the R35. And then for this lightest one, which is kind of like a corally color, will be the R35 and the R32, just because that one's a little bit lighter. But then we're going to go through and we're going to do all of the other coloring. This one and the pine cones are the only ones I think that I had to kind of lay them on top of each other to get the shadow. The other ones are just greenery. Speaking of the pine cones, I did want to talk about the colors. So I had some leftover dark brown and I had some leftover craft. And so normally I would not, like if I was just going to use cardstock and I wasn't going to add any shading, that's not 2 colors that I would put together for a pine cone. But because I know that I'm going to be doing the shading, I can kind of fudge one of the colors, because I know I can add shading to it and kind of switch it up and make it a little bit of a darker brown. So when you're looking at your scraps, just know that it doesn't have to be like perfect, spot on, hit the nail on the head type of color, because you can adjust that color with your markers. So the same, like when I'm doing the center of the poinsettia, I cut it out of kind of like a mustard color. But in order to add some dimension, I can go in with my markers and add that to help them look a little bit separated and to help it look a little bit brighter. So anywho, yeah, I think that, like, I know probably most of you are like, Kelly, I don't do Christmas cards in July. And I'm going to be honest with you, neither does Kelly. Neither do I. I don't do Christmas cards until it's time to do Christmas cards. But because I am a person who I don't make batch Christmas cards, like I make all different ones, something like this is really, really helpful for me because it makes it go faster, and I don't feel like I've shortchanged myself on the creative process. Everybody creates different, and I say this all the time, like we're all on our own art journeys, and so you may enjoy a different part of the process than I enjoy, but I enjoy the making. So the coloring, the creating, not just the gluing together. I like using like my creative side. These ones are for, I think, the mistletoe, and I didn't even end up using them, but I'm going to show them to you anyway, just in case you have the set and you're looking for inspiration, because I think that's important too. So I had intended on putting this up yesterday, because the sale has been going on. It's like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but I didn't get to it because I had to cut my work day a little bit short. We went out to dinner, to celebrate my nephew. I've told you guys before, he's leaving to go to dentistry school. And so this was kind of like his final dinner, and he picked Shinto's, which is like a hibachi place. And so since Jelly Bean is kind of like a little COVID baby, like my husband and I got married in COVID, and then she was born kind of in the middle of COVID. She actually has not been a lot of places. Like we have been to very few restaurants with her. We don't really go out, like if I go to the store, like sometimes she'll go with me, but I mean, really, I don't leave the house very often. So she goes to swim class, but like we don't take her places like we took peanut butter places, because it's just like a different time now. You know what I'm saying? It's so strange. So I was kind of excited for her to go to the restaurant, because it's hibachi, and so they do the cooking where you can watch it, and it's kind of like dinner and a show. But she was really afraid of the fire, which I guess is a good thing. Like in real life, survival, you're supposed to be afraid of fire. But every time they did it, not even just at our table, at other people's tables, she was like, no, sir. Like, turned her head, covered her face. Like, she did not like it at all. Let's talk about these pine cones real quick. So you can see what I was talking about with that craft and the dark brown. There's almost too much contrast, but we're going to use these browns to kind of bring them together. So I'm going to use the darkest color to do the shadow on the dark brown. And I know it doesn't look like you can see it, but I promise you in real life, you can see it. So I am doing that little bit of shadow, and then I'm going to use the mid-tone and the lightest color to shade the craft. So I'm going to add the shading to kind of like the bottom part of that top layer. So then I will have a little bit of room, at the top, not just for my lightest color, but also to leave some of that craft kind of peeking out. And this just kind of helps marry those two together so that the contrast is not so stark. And you'll see the difference between this one when we're done coloring it and the other one that hasn't been colored at all. So this one, see, kind of blends in kind of nicely and has those highlights, and this one's a very stark contrast. So I have my layout kind of done up there. For my sentiment, I chose to do, originally I thought I was going to do Wishing You Joy this Christmas. So I treated with my anti-static tool, and then I stamped it down in our silver pigment ink and heat embossed it in silver embossing powder. But it turned out that I didn't really like the step of the sentiment, so I left off this Christmas. So I just did Wishing You Joy. But yeah, so she was really good in the restaurant, shockingly. Like, I was not sure how she would do because she's not used to having to really be constrained. But since my whole family was there, she just kind of went from like my lap to her dad's lap to my mom's lap to my one of my sisters to, she just kind of sat with everybody. So I guess the various viewpoints were enough to keep her entertained. I was worried that she wouldn't have anything to eat. My husband very smartly packed some goldfish, just in case she needed a little snack. She did eat the lo mein noodles. She does like pasta. She tried the rice, but it wasn't for her. But we kind of knew that we were going to end up, having to feed her more when we got home. But it was nice to see everybody, and it was good to see my nephew. He, if you guys remember from 100 years ago, us doing the furniture refinishing, we still have tons of stuff left in our basement because we're hopeful that we'll get back to it someday. Let's go back to the card. So obviously I've picked up my arrangement with my press and seal, and I folded that open. I did press down some of that silver ink onto my glass mat and mix it with a little bit of water so that I could splatter it into the background. Splatters aren't for everybody, and that's totally fine. You can skip it. I was just trying to find another way to kind of bring in that metallic. And then we're going to start adding the glue, to the base, to the closest layers to the bottom, and then we'll close our little hinge, push it down, add the next layer, and so on and so forth. My tape, because I tried to just barely tape the edge of it, my tape is gonna move, which does cause me a little bit of problems, but for the most part, it was okay. It was no big deal. What was that? Oh, my nephew. Yeah. So we used to refinish furniture. And so consequently, we do still have a bunch of furniture in our basement because we're, the definition of delusional and think that maybe once our daughter gets older, we'll be able to go back and do it. We'll have to see whether or not that really works for us. But so he doesn't have any furniture, for his apartment or anything. So he came over after dinner to see if he could find anything. He ended up being able to find 2 end tables, a coffee table, and a kitchen table. Unfortunately, we didn't have chairs for him. But so then, while I was putting little Jelly Bean to bed, my husband, my son, loaded up all of this furniture and drove it back over to my sister's house for my nephew so that he could come, so he could take it with them. So I just told him, in which my husband was like, nah, just get rid of it. But I was like, hey, before you get rid of it, just let me know. Because if we're in a spot where we're refinishing furniture. So maybe my husband's not delusional. Maybe I'm the delusional one that someday I think we're going to be able to get back to it. Maybe not. Who knows? So with the sentiment, because we have so many die cuts that are kind of like built up on top of each other, I am going to use just a little bit of foam tape. This is a lower profile foam tape. This is the one from Honeybee. So I'm just going to put it under the joy part, because the top of the joy, like where that it kind of loops around, actually sits on top of the flower. And so it doesn't need any extra adhesive, but the bottom part definitely does. So yeah, also, I know I tell you guys all the time about their clearance sale, but it's so good. Like they're having a clearance sale. It's like 70% off stuff, which is amazing. Spellbinders is having a Christmas in July sale. Erin Lee Creative. I'm trying to think. There's a bunch of them. So like I said, I will link that below for you to go over and check out. But if you only have time to check out one of them, I would check out the Honeybee one. That's just my personal opinion. You do you, boo-boo. So this is the metallic mix, which is so great. It's like a copper, gold, brush silver. I'm using the shiny silver ones because obviously that complements not only my sentiment, but also my snowflakes. So I'm doing that. And then I decided I wanted to add some glitter. So usually I would normally do this like to each individual piece, because dumping glitter on your whole card just seems crazy. But it worked. I'm going to be honest with you. So I used glossy accents as my glue. This does mean that the rock candy distress, why can't I think of the word? I want to say sparkles, but that's not it. Glitter. The glitter, guys, is going to be clear. It's not going to be white. It's not going to look like snow. It's going to be clear because my glue is clear. If you wanted it to be white, then I would probably, use something that was more like a texture paste. But then I'm just going to dump these all on top. I did add some spots in the background of the snowflakes where, the glossy accents would stick to it. And then I'll be honest with you, I dumped it off. I tapped it off any of the extra, but before I was completely done with it, I held it over my garbage can and really gave it a few shakes. And then that's it. That's the whole card. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope this inspires you, even though we're in July, for your future Christmas cards. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I appreciate your time, and I'll catch you on the next video. Bye.